On this episode of AV Week, NAB and Enterprise Connect both cancel their in-person events this week, looking at Zoomtopia and the announcements coming out of there, and the rise of NDI in AV. All that and more, next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 526, recorded Friday, September 17th, 2021. We'll do it live.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment, and by Chief, the global leader in commercial AV mounting solutions.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, her name is Charmaine Torella. I cannot roll my R's, but she's fantastic, and she's with Varex. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Just down the coast from you is a young man by the name of Hanan AVWeek. He is from Prime View, and now he is in the beautiful state of Florida. Welcome, sir.
Thank God. Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Happy Friday as well. This is just water.
It's just, well, you know, it is the afternoon where you are. And last but not least, a young man that the last time I talked to him, he worked for a manufacturer. Now he works for an integrator because that's where all the cool kids work, Hanan. Chris Fitzsimmons,
100%.
Currently with AVISPL. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be back.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, and you.
So this is going to be a very, very long story. We're going to talk about Infocom. We're going to talk about COVID because, you know, why the heck not? Because there's nothing else going on. About a week or so ago, I had the incredible pleasure to interview Dave Labuscus about Infocom and about the fact that they're going and they're all in and everything. And then a couple things happened this week, and Dave made the rounds with some fantastic people. My buddy Megan Dutta got a chance. Dan over at Center Communications sat down with him. Cindy Davis over at Future. So some great interviews that Mr. Labuscus did. Again, to highlight the fact that they're still going. Why did he feel the need to do it 2 weeks in a row? Well, a little show called National Association of Broadcasters canceled this week. NAB is one of the top 4 biggest shows, happens in Vegas every single year. They decided to say, you know what, kids, we're going to pull the plug and we'll see you all in April. Enterprise Connect later that afternoon also did the exact same thing, saying that they are going virtual this year. A couple things here to point out. Number one, Enterprise Connect was scheduled to happen in Orlando, which is where Infocom is happening. NAB was scheduled to happen in Vegas. Las Vegas and Nevada have a couple more tools in their belt to fight against COVID and infections and stuff due to some legislation and some executive orders passed in Florida and not passed in Nevada. I think I said that with as little political crap as possible, but if I didn't, Tim at avnation.tv, you can yell at me later. Charmaine, we'll start with you. What does all of this mean when we're looking at exhibitors who, there are some that have pulled out from Infocom. I think Mr. Labuscus said they're sitting about 400 exhibitors right about now. The registration is the trajectory is hitting about 25,000, I think, when I interviewed him. What does this say for the industry? What does this say for exhibitors and for the users that are planning on going?
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on that interview with David Labuscus. I watched the whole thing on YouTube. It was excellent, excellent job on your part.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Great interview. What it's saying is that the industry has to recalculate itself now going forward, right? So the industry is now, during COVID, what happened when we were shut down, and I said this a lot of times to a lot of people, now everyone is learning how to be without a trade show. So they're doing the virtual events. They're learning that they can still get as much engagement virtually as they did in person, maybe even more so. And when it's over, they're going to start factoring these virtual events and regional shows into their repertoire going forward to get a deeper penetration of engagement across the world, across the country. So basically, what this means is that's where it's going with the manufacturers. That's where it's going with a lot of the industry. They've learned how to do this now. They had a whole year, 18 months. And they learned also in doing it that they saved a lot of money. So trade shows, at this point, this is the opportunity for the AVIXAs, the NABs of the world, the CEDIAs, to re-envision their trade shows in a capacity that will not only just be live, but also give them that virtual engagement. Like watching your interview with David Labuscas, he talked about digital information, right? We want to present this. We thought about presenting it in a digital way and, figuring out how many people look at this virtual exhibit and presenting that information. That information is very valuable to the integrators, the manufacturers, the technology managers of the world to understand where the interest of the market lies. And in the regular Infocom world, yeah, you get that if you scan into an exhibit, but not everyone scans, right? But if you have that digital component that can do that with a digital audience, you'll get more information, more data that can be very useful in creating, insight into the market. So that's what that means. Now we have to re-envision how the AV world is engaging in this world and not just by trade shows. We learned how to do it and would not spend all that money on booths. And everyone is now still on that track to still re-engage in a different manner. So,
All right, Anand, talk for a second about the ability and the to show certain types of technology virtually, right? Prime View, not for nothing, the direct view LED manufacturer, right? You can get away with a little bit of that virtually, but when you start talking about microphones, you start talking about speakers, you start talking about other things. How do we, as an industry, show off some of these things and demonstrate what it is that is new and better and faster and stronger?
So I think it's definitely a challenge. But in that regard, I completely disagree with Charmaine. I'm sorry. Completely disagree. I think that if you look at, from a manufacturer standpoint, right, we were doing what I'd like to call not Zoomtopia, but Zoombutt, where people are so much time, video presentations for the 6 months, a year into COVID, and it drove the people nuts on all these virtual platforms. So we actually made a conscious decision, I want to say about a year and a half ago, to make a multi-million-dollar investment into, sorry to say this, but a Republican state like Florida, and to create a multi-million-dollar experience center where we partner with Logitech, Aurora, and a bunch of other manufacturers to create an experience center that, regardless of what happens, COVID this or COVID Delta or COVID American, COVID JetBlue, whatever the next version will be of the variant, that we're going to be in a position to demonstrate product. And we believe strongly that it's a lifeline to end users and integrators because, like you said, if you can't physically see this stuff on a visual level, it means nothing. And not everyone has a Logitech meetup in their little small rooms where they could see things with good quality. You know what I mean? We had to literally wire our entire, I don't know how many people here are familiar with NDI, but we made a huge investment into NDI infrastructure so that not only is our entire showroom AV over IP, so that the South Florida office of Verex or AVI can bring a customer to see it, but also when a customer does not feel comfortable, we could do a virtual demo and they could see everything in real time. So we could do both. So we created a hybrid model for our demos. So I think there's going to always be people that are more COVID comfortable, COVID not comfortable, vaccine, no vaccine, and we want to be there to embrace both sides of the fence. And our logic to investing so much money into the space and the attraction for manufacturers like Logitech and Aurora and Middlers Furniture and Wolfish and all these manufacturers to come and join the party is because they know that if I have an AVI office in Portland, Oregon that wants to see something that they can't see at Infocom or NAB because it's not happening, well, I could fly them in for $200, $300, $400 and literally show every example. So we really put our money where our mouth is, and the smart manufacturers join the party quickly. And we're in a position now that if you're building a sports bar, I have a mini sports bar experience. You're doing a gaming environment, we have an esports environment for you, a broadcast environment for you, a mini soccer pitch even. I mean, so we really created every environment because I genuinely believe COVID's not going away anytime soon. It's just not. And I think the government sort of likes living our world in fear, and I don't want customers to feel the same way. So we're really prepared for what's to come next, and we're definitely open, and we have so much technology on the security side as well to make sure that the show is going to go on regardless of what's going on a political level or vaccine level or widespread issue.
And just to jump in on that, Kanan, you're not really disagreeing with me when you flesh it out. Two things can be true at the same time. Like I said, you're re-envisioning what you just said. You built out an experience center in Florida. You're not centralizing all your exhibits into an NAB or an Infocom. So they're both, everything I said is true as well as what you said is true. It is a hybrid, and you are reconfiguring that to where you're making it more regional, and you're not just reliant on Infocom or NAB or something to be the only way, right, that you exhibit your products, and you're going to do virtual. So both things are true at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time.
All right, Mr. Fitzsimmons, you've been on actually three sides of this side, because Chris started out in the AVWeek world as an editor. We're across.
I've retired 3 times now.
Yeah.
2 times. I've retired twice. Yeah.
But you're awfully young to retired, so.
I know. I've got some little bit of, and this obviously is a problem.
Started to shave the head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's not new either. But yeah. So having looked at this from, I like the comment Charmaine and actually both Shannon and Charmaine made about the distribution. Right. This is. Everything we're doing as people right now is about deciding how comfortable we are with what sized group of people we want to be around, honestly. So Infocom happens or doesn't, I think the thing will happen is that less people will visit, and those that will visit will be happy probably and have a great time. But I don't see 75,000 people being willing at the same time to be in the same convention center anytime soon, unless there's like some giant gig, which I saw in Europe last week. And so this idea of having experience centers and individual briefings actually is a great one. We should be doing that anyway. It's a much more personalized experience. As from a manufacturer's point of view, we used to spend half our annual marketing budget or thereabouts on 2 trade shows, right? Is that a good strategy or not? I don't know. Not my decision. It is definitely a thing that happened because it's always happened, not because it was necessarily the right thing to do. So the opportunity to do more personalized events where you get closer touch with customers and more intimate conversations, like you can get in an experience center with 25, 30 people instead of, you guys have been on a buy-amp booth or a Crestron booth or whatever booth at a trade show. The idea that you have a meaningful sales interaction or demonstration of a product in that setting is nonsense. Right, so I actually think it's a positive thing for us as marketers or as manufacturers or as integrators to have those more meaningful conversations. So whether that's at a show or an experience center or whatever, I think that's just an improvement in the situation in general. From the integration point of view, talking to our customers, and I'm very focused on the Microsoft. I am in the Microsoft practice at AVSPL, so it's a lot around Teams rooms, hybrid work, all the buzz phrases that Microsoft's throwing out. That whole process is around helping people choose how they want to interact and making them all feel equal no matter what choice they made. Right, so the technology around front row, putting everybody in an equally sized box at the bottom of the display and showing everybody at home individual headshots of people around a big table instead of just a big table shot. All of that is about meaning that wherever you sit, wherever you choose to do business, you are an equal participant in a conversation and you're not missing out or you're not heard. So it's the same. It's really the same, right? It's whether it's giant trade show or experience center or a giant boardroom and a bunch of small meeting rooms, it's the same. It's the same challenge. It's just got different. It just looks slightly different from the outside, but the underlying social mechanics of it and the technological mechanics are the same thing. How we meet, how we communicate effectively, remotely, in person, or whatever. It's, and it's funny, right? We're talking about manufacturers not showing up at trade shows. There was a very large manufacturer of video switching products that decided a decade ago, Tim, not to go to trade shows anymore. What did they do? They went and built a bunch of experience centers. and training and invested those bazillions of dollars in national experience centers and national offices, and guess what? They've done just fine.
They're still in business.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well,
Is the Extron still going?
Well, I was going to say, just for full transparency, number one, Extron's a sponsor of this fine network. Number two, I was among the folks who ranted and railed at Extron for leaving. It was a detriment to the industry, is what I said. I think at that point, I don't remember. It was 10 years ago, dude. I barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I certainly do remember being among the folks who said that they were making a mistake. And Chris, you're right. They have proved at least me wrong, which is not saying much. My kids do it every day, but you're right. They've proved themselves that they don't. Now here's the thing, and I know a lot of folks at Extron. I know a lot of them listen to this program. They would tell you they didn't stop going to trade shows, right?
Because they just stopped buying a giant booth.
They stopped buying a giant booth, right? And they have not exhibited at Infocom US, nor have they exhibited at Integrated Systems Europe, the other large trade show globally. They've done regional shows. They've done other things. They are still involved in AVIXA. They simply stopped those two large expenses. And you're right. They did invest that other ways. The other thing I know from my days as a tech manager, they will also a lot of times they will fly. They would fly decision makers as well as consultants and engineers to Anaheim, right? Which is their global headquarters. So it can be done. The question is then, not for Extron, right? Not for Crestron, not for the big booths that you're going to see or miss at the show. But for the folks that are in the back 40, right, the 10 by 10s, the tabletops, how do we help them? Because they're the ones who benefit as much or more than the big sponsors.
Yeah, and to some extent, the other side of that is the big sponsors have a duty or maybe a responsibility to help grow the industry and support those back row guys, right? Because what do those big companies do? They invest. They buy those back row guys, or they don't. And without that pool of innovation, you don't get progress, right? You don't get new ideas. So it is tricky. It's hard. Because those guys don't have money for an experience center, right?
Yeah, but some of those big guys, let's take the display manufacturers, like an LG, right?
Or
they
Primeview.
do.
Primeview's a big manufacturer.
Or Primeview, right? They do. Sorry, Kanan, I'm not leaving you out, but I'm just thinking about the LG Roadshow. A lot of times LG Roadshows will have those small tabletop guys in their roadshows, right? They will have, Bluefin or or AppSpace or whatever.
Yep.
Also there, and they fold them in, and they do it's like a collaborative regional experience. So there are some manufacturers that kind of have that example where they do that. And I think it's just going to keep growing now post-COVID, where, Crestron does that too. They have some other people that they showcase with as well.
So to your point, I would say, I think that the smaller to medium-sized firms actually benefit more than the large firms, because it sort of levels the playing field on how your marketing dollars can work. I mean, I have been going for the last 5 years supporting some of my Midwest partners, for example, helping them in their different offices around the country, doing pop-up demos and pop-up events. I've been doing that for 5 years, and not reliant on an Infocom or NAB to close a business. So the fact that we honestly developed mobile solutions when everyone in the market thought we were crazy before the cart option came up from others, we developed that, and we got lucky because when, for argument's sake, one of Tim's internal guys had an event actually in St. Louis, we popped up there with a huge LED wall. In a matter of 4 hours, we were good to go, and we had an all-day event. And I did actually the same thing over this week with Chris's guys here in South Florida, where AVI-SPO hosted like an AV workplace technology panel. And literally, we popped up and we had a beautiful LED system that was set up in a matter of hours. I checked out for my Yom Kippur holiday yesterday, and my guys are breaking it down today. It's very easy to do. And I think that's going to segue into also workplace technology, which is you're going to have people that want to do things on the fly and make budgets go further as well. So I think you're going to see a multi-purpose room that's going to functionally also going to grab a display and say, let's put this in the lobby now. And then we use that same budget. And I'm seeing already that from large financial institutions where no one's even in the damn building right now. Everyone's going to go back to the office September. Now it's pushed out till January. So it's a trend.
So I was going to, let me ask you this, and then we'll wrap up this, because I don't want to talk about this every week. There is something that happens every week, so we kind of have to. What does this look like next year? What does this look like in 23? What does it look like in 24? I'm not saying that Infocom's not going to happen in 2021. I have no vision of that one way or the other. There are certain folks that are dropping out. Labuscas even said it last week when I interviewed him, and said it this week when Megan and everybody else interviewed him. He is not, ignorant to the fact that there are going to be some folks still drop out between now and the end of October. So this will certainly be a smaller version of Infocom. But what does NAB look like in 23, 24? Are you guys saying that this is the trend for the future and these shows will become smaller in general? Or is it going to be, we're in a pandemic, this is going to move to an endemic, which I had to look that word up this week. But it's something where it's manageable, it's doable, but it's still with us, this virus, this disease. So what do trade shows like this look like moving forward?
If I could take a first swing at this, if you don't mind.
Nope.
So, I'm an Orthodox Jew, and, one of the biggest struggles for us is synagogue, right? We try to congregate on a daily basis, if not on a weekly basis. And every Orthodox rabbi, every conservative rabbi coming up on the high holidays, and even before that, had the same exact concern, which is there was a period of time where these houses of worship were closed, right? And then it's like, wow, how do we market ourselves as a non-for-profit organization, religious organization? How do we get people to feel comfortable come back to church? Not only that, how do we get an option, like Charmaine said, a virtual model where people can also do virtual? And it's very interesting that a lot of rabbis had to, and churches as well, we do a lot of work with First Baptist churches all over the country. They had to change their model and say, we may not be able to get donations from the little tray that goes around all the time, right? In that charity box in the world of the synagogue, it's what's called the tzedakah box. It's the same thing. So it's the same challenge, is that, wow, we have to market ourselves how to get people to do things on a virtual level and a physical level. And in certain places like California, those churches are closed for business, and some places in California are still closed. And other areas of the countries that are a different color, not blue, not red, whatever they want to call it, they are back open for business. And it's very interesting to see that they have to retool and think about, as a religious organization, how to attract people to come back again. So I think that's going to be the same thing, where you have to create value at the end of the day. As an AVIXA, as an Infocom, as NAB, you have to give it a reason for people to come. Otherwise, they're not going to come. There has to be a special draw that you could only get when you go to the events. And it's the same thing when you go to any, house of worship. There's something special you get with the energy in that room. That's what it is, I think, for me.
I've had lots of conversations with AVIXA on this since last year, right? In terms of, one of the problems being live with AVIXA, as we all know, big pavilions, a lot of ground to cover in 3-4 days and under a week. And a lot of times we sign ourselves up for certain events and things, and we find ourselves running from one area to the other, sweating to get to it, to be there on time. And by the time we get there, it's already started. We missed a great integral part of it, or something else came up. And I would say to them, wouldn't it be nice that while you have this live event, to have this virtual component that actually can stream or have this on demand, a lot of these crucial events, webinars, seminars, whatever is happening at Infocom, available to me. So if I'm finished up at one event, I can not run and I can stay within a certain area, and from my tablet or my PC, just participate, right? We can still be at the show, but the truth is there's so much to see at these shows. It's not always possible for everyone to attend and participate. So the virtual component is, I think, what's going to happen futuristically in some capacity. I don't know how, I know that ISC, Mr. Blackman, did that, right? He was working on that for ISC because he felt that would, for the kind of show ISC is, you're talking about, it's very global, a lot of participants that weren't going to be able to make it live, to give them an additional component to make it possible for them to at least be a part of it, to participate. So I think the shows are going to look a little bit different. It's still going to be live, but there's going to be some virtual components, some apps perhaps. Infocom has that app that, you're able to see where the exhibitors are. They could graduate that. They could evolve that. NAB could do something similar using more, digital engagement, especially for the show that it is. That's their wheelhouse, right? I see the shows kind of going in that direction. Also, maybe AVIXA and NAB becoming a little more regional, maybe breaking themselves up a little bit. That's a possibility as well. I think in order to keep that engagement, that's where it's going, because that's where it's going with the manufacturers and everyone else. So it's a trend. It's happening. Enterprise Connect, Gartner Symposium, everyone is going down this trend.
Enough about Infocom and COVID and all that junk. Zoomtopia happened this week, speaking of virtual events. Lots of stuff came out of it. New hardware, new security features. We'll go around the horn here. Before we get here, Hanan, we'll start with you. What were one or two of your favorite things to come out of Zoomtopia this year, or what do you think they may have missed and probably should have had this year?
So I think there's something that was brushed off pretty quickly, and you've seen it recently as well, is what's known as what I believe to be somewhat of as a threat to some integrators, where you can't sell a lot of hardware, but it's the NDI integration. I think NDI integration is going to be a game changer for the AV industry, for those that adopt it. And what I mean by that is the following. Between manufacturers like obviously Microsoft and Zoom and Logitech, a lot of these manufacturers, they're collaborating very closely to make it easier to deploy technology and easier to support technology. NDI, which is a technology owned by Newtek, which is really owned by the larger company VizRT, they are the mothership driving this narrative, right? And it's very interesting that not only is it a great technology, but it's cost effective. So what I foresee things like Zoomtopia discussing and really going into the details more about is the integrators that adopt and are better yet, are the early adopters and saying, you know what, I'm not going to give my customer a projection system just because that's what he asked for. I'm going to offer him other solutions like LED walls, whatever it is. In the same token, I think the integrators that take that approach, not order takers, but are really proactive in designing systems for their customers that make sense, I think those integrators are going to benefit of things like NDI. Because if one integrator is proposing an NDI infrastructure and the other one is proposing a more archaic technology where you have a lot of boxes and a lot of things in between, number one is that's going to be more expensive and that's going to have more points of failure. The NDI approach, I think, which is something that Zoom and a lot of their manufacturers are getting smart about, is really the wave of the future, right? Today, if you don't have an IT person on your AV team, you're kind of screwed because so much of that is tied to the network. So I think NDI technology is something that it was really brushed upon, not really gone into too much detail yet. But I could tell you from firsthand experience, we had these little cameras from a company that most people never even heard of called Bird Dog, okay, from Australia. And they are wicked. I mean, these things are so cool that I have a demo coming up right now for a casino in just a few moments. That's why I have to dip. But I could literally go on TeamViewer from my home, change everything, go into the work PC, change everything, and look live at my NDI cameras that are positioned all over my experience center and change the content, see what it looks like in the lighting of my space with that new content I just deployed. I mean, it's sick. It's so cool. Now, in that world where a source is on NDI, and now we're going to have, God willing, shortly on our display side NDI, I mean, these are game changer technologies, and those are things that Zoomtopia and some other manufacturers are starting to talk about. But I think it's going to come down to end of Q3, early Q4, it's either you're on the horse or you're not. And I think the manufacturers that adapt this thing quickly are going to gain big time. Not only that, the integrators that embrace this thing are going to win big time. I remember the early adopters on HD-based T, the same exact thing happened. The guys who jumped on early won projects. I think NDI can potentially play that same thing.
All right, Mr. Fitzsimmons, we'll bring you on this and let you and Charmaine hammer out from an integrator side. What were some of the things that came out of Zoomtopia? There were a couple of Zoom Room announcements, as well as the hardware from folks like D10. What were some of your favorites?
Actually, the more interesting thing for me was some of the tech weenie stuff underneath. Like they've made a lot of advancements in their API and the kind of integration stuff with other services. I slightly disagree with Hanan on the importance of the tech. Like if you look at the trends that Microsoft and Zoom and others are pushing, it is really these very simple all-in-one solutions. And that is the huge majority of the rooms that are going to get deployed over the next 5 years. If you look at Frost & Sullivan research, they're all talking about these front-of-room AIO units, sound bars with integrated cameras and speakers and, accessories. The 1% of rooms that needs, an integrated AV solution, a la Biamp, a la Shure microphones and all that kind of good stuff, they're important, but they're not the focus of what these UC companies are doing. And what they are doing is making important interfaces around the edges to allow those rooms to be created, because every giant account needs one or two of those rooms. And nobody wants to say to that giant account, no, you can't have this 50-seat boardroom with 58 cameras. But the value for Microsoft and Zoom is in the other 4,000 rooms. Right? They have to keep the account. They have to make sure that they can have the fancy boardroom for the C-suite. But the other rooms are the real business. They're where the licenses are sold, which is what Zoom and Microsoft are motivated by. And they're where the volume is and the value, right? So that leads into this point about, okay, I've got 4,001 rooms. How the hell do I manage that? And so Microsoft has a management platform. It has its, the Teams admin console. Zoom has its own administrative console, but they are focused very much on the Zoom experience. So the APIs that allow those to be attached to other services are the ones that I'm really, really interested in. And Zoom is probably slightly ahead of Microsoft on that right now in terms of integration with other platforms and its ability to see other devices other than like the Zoom compute and the USB camera. But because there are other things, there's displays, there is the signage outside, there is the PA system in the reception. Like from a technology management point of view, you've got to be able to look at all of that in as fewer panes of glass as possible. One pane of glass, ideal. And so a lot of news came out of Zoomtopia around the edges about, hey, this integration and this API is now available to this platform. That for me is really, really interesting because it's helping solve the real day-to-day problems of managing these giant estates of new technology.
All right. Charmaine, we'll let you have the last word on this. What was one or two things that came out of this week in Zoomtopia that knocked your socks off?
I'm in line with everything Chris said because he's right. It has to be integration friendly, and those APIs were spot on because I've had customers, especially with the Zoom phones came in, which is still something they're working on, that doesn't really integrate well with the DSPs of the Biamps and the Extrons of the world for those audio systems, but they're working on it. So the APIs, to help factor into the integrated rooms, that's going to be very key because no client, like Chris said, you have the rooms where it could just be a Zoom room experience, but then you also have the other rooms, which is, zoning audio and video content, and that it can't just be done through Zoom. So the APIs are really, really something that I loved. I also loved the Zoom event conference. That was very exciting to me. I thought that was a good play on Zoom's part to be, they're taking a page from, how would I say, On24.
Yep.
I know you guys know about, right. So On24, where that for a long time is one of the leaders in streaming and event conferencing and just having everything encompassed. That was exciting to see. I'm glad that they've enhanced that, because a lot of clients right now are still involved in doing that. They want to do more of it, especially now if we can't be in person and everyone is distributed all across the world and all across the map. So that's going to be, it was good. Some of the stuff and that was one of the other things that I liked. And I just hope they just continue working on it and they just don't stop, right? It's just being able to play with others is important. And I think they know that. And seeing this at Zoomtopia, they understand, they get it. And that's comforting to know, especially on the integration side, because I have to integrate with them, right? I have to integrate these things and I have to be concerned, can it or can it not? So I'm glad that Zoom is learning to be, very much an agnostic partner to everyone in different capacities. So it was good to see.
I think it was a good event, right? We circle back to our previous conversation without mentioning the previous conversation. The two companies that have done the best job of a virtual event are Zoom and Microsoft.
But they've had to.
Right, they've had to, but I've seen other events that have gone virtual that have been hot garbage, and this is the risk, I think, for our industry, is that it's proven that you can do a great virtual event. The problem is it costs a boatload of money. And I'm not sure that we're ready to spend a boatload of money on a virtual event of the quality of Zoomtopia or Microsoft Ignite. And that's what worries me a little bit about this idea that we're going to have this hybrid element, because I don't see these NAB, VIXA, integrated systems events being willing to spend enough money to make it a good an excellent virtual experience. And therefore, I don't think it'll replace. I think we'll be back. I think in 4 years' time, we'll be back exactly where we started, and I think that will be a shame. I think that's a miss, and it'll be interesting to see whether the industry as a whole accepts that.
Well, and I will give you one more. I don't know that the live events clients are ready to spend the boatload of money it takes to have virtual events, because the one thing in talking with some live events colleagues of mine, trying to get their clients to understand that a virtual event is not inherently less expensive. It's actually more expensive because you're paying for the live part, and now you're paying for the virtual part, the streaming part, right? So you're actually adding costs to it. And, I get Chris's point about NAB and Infocom. That's great. But the Association of Physicians, right? The National Association of Lawyers, these are the ones who really, really don't get it. And when you hit them with a bill that is 25, 40% more than it was when you were live, they're like, well, screw it. Why don't we just do it live, right? And so that's some of these conversations that'll end up happening in the next 2 or 3 years. No.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. You still, again, during COVID, this is going to be with us for some time. I'll give you another example. We had a lot of wine tastings with our clients during this time. And we had that winery that actually did it virtual. And we asked them, how did you do during this pandemic? A winery, as you know, they rely on people coming to them. And that killed, would have killed any business in that industry. But they said, we switched to virtual. And what was interesting was, we're regionally based in terms of how we operate. But when we switched to virtual, we got to go outside of that region, and, the restaurants shut down. So that hurt them too.
Oh, yeah.
And so they said we had to find a way to pivot to get revenue, keep revenue going. And amazingly, it worked. And not only did it work, we're starting to open up again, but we're going to keep some piece of that because it expanded us a little bit, our business. So in terms of virtual, yes, you're right. It will cost, people. I used to sell virtual events all the time and resell on 24 and do all sorts of things. But it depends, how you factor it in. It doesn't have to be completely virtual, but certain elements of it, to get a different and wider engagement, this is what we have to do in order to keep our business and expand it at this point. Because that's the hard part. We're kind of like floating and treading water right now until everyone's able to come back in. What do you do in the meantime? You're going to have to use this virtual component to keep everyone's interest, to keep them, excited, to keep them engaged, to keep expanding in a way. And then when we get back, we're going to do it live. There is going to be a component that we still can expand and still thread that needle in a small way. That's a little bit of a uptick in expenditure, but not a grand one. So it's going to take, it's something that everyone has to just hunker down and really start recalibrating and thinking about it and start measuring everything they've been doing thus far and see how much they're going to take from one bucket into the other, right? Or
Absolutely. All right, guys. That'll do it for us. Thank you all so much. Charmaine Torella, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you or Varix?
people connect with me. I work at Varix. You can contact me on LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform. Twitter also. Just Charmaine Torella, Torruella. Pronounced Torreya. I'll roll it for you again. But you can say Torella for American purposes.
I appreciate that. Mr. Fitzsimmons, good to see you, sir. I'm glad you have a new shirt on. How do people connect with you, or if they want AVISPL?
Oh, well, they could definitely reach us at avispl.com. If they want to connect with me in particular, then LinkedIn's probably the best place. I'm not going to try and do my name on air, so well done, Charmaine. Yeah, Chris Fitzsimmons on LinkedIn. I think it's just /Chris Fitzsimmons.
All right. Thank you so much, Hanan. Everybody from Prime View, how do people get a hold of you?
Best way to get in touch with me, Hanan at Prime View Global or at LinkedIn. You could find me there, Hanan AVRBuch, CHANAN, last name AVERBUCH.
All right. Thank you, guys. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. While you're there, check out our sponsors. I mentioned Extron is one of those. We thank them. But check out our coverage of CEDIA. All of those videos are up. Long as InfoComm happens, Tim Albright's going, and we'll give you some videos from there as well. Talking with some CEOs of some of the exhibitors here in the next couple of days. Those will post sometime by the time you hear this, but this will post by the end of that week. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.